A garden of pure ideology.
Yeah, just your typical Super Bowl car ad.
Or a hilarious beer ad.
Break was over 15 minutes ago, Mitch!
I think you're the best ever.
I think we're gonna be here a while.
Welcome back. Do you think you're funny? Do you ever wonder what it takes to land a major ad campaign with your ability to make people laugh? Do you want to learn a little bit about the art of casting, working with celebrities, and the elusive rug pull of comedy? Yes, you do. And you're in luck, because today we're diving in with the creative mind of Win Bates, a seasoned commercial director navigating the world of humor and storytelling, currently with Tool of North America, and you know I like Tool. Win shares behind-the-scenes stories working on major campaigns, including but not limited to his recent Doritos Super Bowl teaser featuring Patrick Mahomes, Chris Jones, and Xavier Worthy. We explore how he gets athletes game ready for commercials, the art of injecting personal comedic sensibilities into pre-existing scripts, as well as his perspective on Spec content. So you may want to dust off that Spec script, but that, you just have to listen. So whether you're an industry veteran looking for some inside tips or just curious to hear about your peers getting it done, this episode is for you. And on that note, let's jump in with Win Bates.
My name is Win Bates. I am a commercial director, comedy commercial director mostly. And I'm at Tool of North America. And that's pretty much it.
Awesome, man. Well, per a little tradition that I do, I like to warm up with a few icebreakers. By definition, you have made it as a commercial director. One of your biggest spots recently was the Doritos Super Bowl teaser with, quote, experts, Patrick Mahomes, Chris Jones, Xavier Worthy. I just wanted to ask, how do you sleep at night working for the bad guys? I'm a bitter Bills fan. I'm sorry.
No, don't be bitter.
No, that was a great spot, man. It was totally fun. And that was one of your recent big ones, right?
That was definitely one of the more fun projects I've done in the past year. And the guys behind it, I've worked with a lot over at Goodby, Silverstein and Partners. I love working with athletes. Patrick was amazing. Chris Jones, Xavier, Creed, they were all so fun. So yeah, that was a great one. I am also a Giants fan, sadly. So
you also know pain.
Yeah. So
future might be bright.
Yeah, but I'm not that diehard. So now I wear at Kansas City out half the time. So,
well, I'm curious, when you're bringing in athletes, especially that close to the big game, as it's called in advertising, when people don't want to say Super Bowl, how much time do you get with them in advance?
Honestly, it depends on what they've negotiated in that situation. I think we had like 2 hours with Patrick and a little bit more time with the other guys. I'd say normally about 2 hours, and sometimes you get a half a day if you're really lucky, but normally 2 hours is about the number.
Is that the day of or the day before?
Day of, yeah, like the shoot day. You might meet them at like a fitting the day prior. You might meet them 5 minutes before you shoot, which is kind of more standard, I feel like. Yeah, and that's what it was like then. Got to go meet all the guys right before, kind of walk them through the plan, some dialogue, kind of run some ideas by them, see how they were feeling, and then get in the room and just move fast,
You have a lot of experience with comedy. What's your move? So let's say you've got let's go with the couple hours thing. You got a couple hours day of before you're about to shoot a major spot and you need results with athletes. Some of them, obviously, Patrick Mahomes has a ton of commercial experience now. How are you warming these guys up to you so quickly and getting them to buy in?
They've read the scripts and they know why they're there, and hopefully they like the work. So they're already excited to be there. But yeah, I try to just keep things light and fun. We do the script first and we do it multiple times, and we kind of let them put it in their own words a little bit. And then I kind of run different jokes by them that hopefully they find funny. And if they find them funny, then normally they'll want to do them and it'll be fun. If they don't think they're funny, we move on. It's just like being in a room with your buddies. You can make them laugh. They're going to be like, all right, let's try that, or whatever.
I never had a prayer of going to the NFL, but just a little high school football. Any athletes, I'm sure, can be pretty fun to be around once you get in and once you get them to buy in. So I assume you've had some good times.
100%. Yeah. They're, the regular guys are obviously superstars. And sometimes you forget that a lot of them are pretty young still, like I'm 41 And I'm like talking up to these guys like they're my heroes because they are, but they're also 26, 28. It's an interesting dynamic, but they're so used to being in front of the camera, most of them. And I think having Creed, Chris Jones, Xavier, Patrick, all of them in the room together probably made it a little bit easier, a little bit more fun for them. You know, they're kind of playing themselves to a degree, and being around buddies is always fun.
Not all your spots are the same, but do you have a like a pre-directing ritual of any type? You got any songs you need to listen to? Any go-to snacks? A certain move? Certain stretch?
No, not really. I basically just read the script the first time, and if it makes me laugh, or even if I like the idea, but I feel like it could be funnier, I'm like all in, and I want to do a call and talk to the creative, see kind of how they got there. And I think my brain always goes immediately to casting, like who's the right, regardless of budget or whatever, who is the perfect person for this, and then that's a great reference, and we can work off that with the casting team and try to find that fresh new face, if possible, to be that new like Aubrey Plaza-esque role for this kind of thing. So I always think about whatever the casting might be, and of course I always think about the dialogue and other ways to make it a little funnier, or could I throw out some alt lines that we could also capture that might be funnier? How do we make this thing build and just really make it the funniest commercial possible?
You're in New York, right?
Yeah, I grew up in Connecticut, and I moved back here when I went full-time directing. I was basically really just going full-time unemployed for like 3 years. So I moved home and but kept doing the treatment process. Yeah, this is pre-COVID, so it was like less common to not live in LA or whatever if you're working there. So yeah, I moved back, and I've been here about 8 years now.
And Tool's only office is in LA, right?
Correct. They've got 3 sections of reps, so we have kind of people everywhere, but they don't have a specific brick and mortar like location here in New York City.
Well, if you're willing to share, how'd you get hooked up with Tool, not being in LA?
The managing director is a woman named Nancy Cohen, who I'm like super close with, and she brought me in as one of the first things I think she did there when she became MD probably 7 years ago. I was freelancing. I was doing, this was like the beginning of kind of in-house stuff becoming more than just like editorial and tagging, and that it was becoming like, oh, we're gonna shoot things. So I was working in-house here and there at BBDO and Deutsch, and I got nominated for an Emmy for this thing I did for Monica Lewinsky's foundation. And then I did a comedy thing that was like mockumentary style for 7-Eleven with Deadpool as like a tie-in. And she saw all that stuff and was like into it. And yeah, and I ended up signing with them soon thereafter.
Do you remember how she saw it?
Definitely online, but she reached out to me on LinkedIn.
In New York?
I was in LA on a shoot at the time, and I headed back, and it just kind of worked. I was talking to a couple other potential shops at that time. I'd been freelance for like 2 years.
Yeah.
Maybe more. So yeah, I'd been doing a lot of different projects up until then.
When was this? 2017? 2016?
Something like that, yeah. I graduated film school in 2012 and didn't have any idea how to make money. I was pitching web series and movies, and I had a buddy who worked at Deutsch, and he helped me kind of get interviewed there. And I became a producer. I probably should have become a copywriter, but I became a producer. And the good thing about that is I got exposed to a lot of the process, which is like how creatives hire directors and why they like them, and the phone calls where they're like doodling throughout the whole call. And you're like, oh, he doesn't think this is interesting. Oh, but he likes that, or she likes this, and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, it was good to get kind of a behind the scenes view of the process of how they hire directors and advertisers.
This is where you can see one of the reasons I was real excited once I started looking at your career. And I was like, oh, cool.
And if I was working in that agency today, I would be shooting as much as I could in-house, because it feels like there's a lot of opportunity to do that stuff. Back then, it was less so, like nobody wanted to shoot in the house. They were always trying to take it out of the house. Every once in a while, you could do something and maybe they use it. But now I feel like, it's like, especially with social, there's a lot of opportunity to do that stuff. So
just curious, what were you shooting on in 2017 and 2016?
In film school, the guy who's still one of my DPs and one of my best friends, we maxed out 2 credit cards and bought a red camera. So we were shooting and renting this red camera to make our money back for a few years. And I think we shot up a red.
Were you on the red lot for any of that?
The actual film lot?
Yeah.
No. We just bought one of the cameras and literally like got 2 like $12,000 maxed out credit cards, and we're like, we'll rent it, we'll make it work, we're gonna make movies, and then some commercials, some spec stuff even is needed, that sort of thing.
There are multiple opinions on specs. Sometimes they get a little hot. Some people are for them, some people are against them. if I understood your past interviews correctly that I was able to find, you're pro Spec and you still use one to this day. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I'd love to hear about that spec. And then at the end, I'd love to just hear how you would spec again today.
Yeah. So I think it depends. The spec element, I think it depends on who would be pro or anti. Like if you work for an ad agency and you're going to go shoot something for your client without them knowing about it and try to sell it to them, I feel like that's a tough road. Like maybe unless they're, at least in my experience, I don't know why it is, but it seems like people don't like that, right? So even if you make the best thing ever, it's like you're going to mess up maybe the product. They don't want to use that product, or maybe they just didn't feel like they were involved. So let's just remake it with us now. You know, what I don't know the reasoning, but I've never been successful in selling a spec after the fact. And I've had several that they tried to sell at the ad agency and for whatever reason didn't happen. I am pro it from a creative perspective. How else are you going to show your ability to tell a story and cast and whatever it is that makes you special? Like for me, the only thing that sets me apart, in my opinion, there's probably other things people make an argument. My thing is being funny. Like that's my thing, right? And I have friends who are just like visual geniuses, and that's their thing. And they couldn't tell a joke, save their life or whatever, but they can make this gorgeous VO-driven movie or whatever that I'm like, man, I would have had a joke here, but that is amazing. It's like we're all different, and that's what sets us apart. And I think a spec gives you the ability to show that thing that makes you special, whatever it is. The challenge will always be, and I have these conversations with friends of mine still who are my age that we're still making stuff. We're doing stuff on the side together or apart. How to make some sort of a splash to get you either some work or at least get on the reel where it's strong enough that it feels like a legit. And yeah, and that's always, I think, the challenge. But the spot that I was lucky with, I was at Deutsch. I was hungry and wanted to make some stuff. And this is before in-house productions were happening. Steelhead didn't exist yet. That's Deutsch's in-house. And I basically was asking some buddies that I'd done work with and produced radio spots for and social stuff and whatever the hell we'd done. Like, hey, do you have any spots you always wish got made that didn't get made? And one of them was called VW Sabotage. And it was about these little kids who sabotaged their parents' cars so they could ride with their friend and his dad's Volkswagen to school. And it was just a very simple, funny idea to me. And I always liked working with kids. I thought it was always very funny to make a kid act like an adult a little bit, you know? So I always still get a good laugh. So yeah, we went out and made it, shot it on our camera, did it with not really any budget. And yeah, like they wanted to sell it. The team at Volkswagen, the CEO, the CCO at the time were like, let's just air this thing. It was fucking great, you know? It was, and yeah, it was like a home run, but the client didn't want to air it for whatever reason. Can't blame them. They weren't there. And it's not exactly the model. Like, of course, we couldn't get the model car they wanted because we had only money. Right. So we were like, well, just replace the car. But ultimately, they just came up with some new work. But I got to keep this piece that I still have in my reel today, which is cool.
So 2 questions. What was your job at Deutsch at the time when you decided to do this?
At that point, I think I was an integrated producer, which basically was like digital was now a bigger thing. And so you're not just broadcast, you're kind of all across everything.
So was this kind of your strategic move to say, this is me starting my creative official entry as much as I can?
I don't think there's any strategy to it. If we're like, I like to make stuff. I think I can make stuff. Let's see if I can, convince my friends who are creatives that I can do that for them. I didn't even think there would be in-house production, to be honest. So I really don't know why we did it, but other than just making something. And but I definitely always had the itch to go back to directing. After Deutsch, I then was kind of a head of content. Would maybe been the title, but it was kind of like I was doing a lot of productions for like Jordan Brandon thing at a place called Los York, which is still around today. But it was like a smaller, scrappier shop that originally came from like motion graphics. And anyway, so then when I was there, a comedy spot finally came in because nothing we did was comedy. And I was the only guy who had a comedy spot, the VW thing, and maybe a couple others that I'd done. And so I got to do this thing for VML for Motorola. And it got like an editor's pick and was picked up by Ad Age. And I was like, all right, I'm going to go full time as a director. But, it still took many years.
Part of the reason I said strategy was because you used a car. So did you do that just for another reason? Or did you say, well, it should be a car because that's going to set me up for future jobs?
I did that only because my friend who had this really funny script worked on Volkswagen, and that's who it was written for. And just never and it just had never gotten made. So he was maybe a creative director at the time, maybe more like a senior copywriter or something, or a director. But yeah, he was like, let's go make this script. And we were good buddies, similar sense of humor. And I was like, this is hilarious. Let's do it. So he was the first one to step up. And I actually have another kind of crazy Spec story. Later, when I was already like at Tool and working, and my buddy had a campaign for Budweiser that was so fucking fun.
Buddy meaning a creative with an idea or a script, or somebody who was on the Budweiser account?
Yeah, ex-Deutsch guy who was a good friend of mine. He was in my wedding kind of thing. Like, we just known each other 10 years at this point. When he had like a free getaway to like the Fairmont's like honeymoon lounge, I went with him. That's like that's like the kind of friend, just like good buddy. And he had this script, and he was at another ad agency, and again they were kind of not sure if they wanted to make it or not. And I was like, let's just go shoot it. Again, a situation where ultimately it didn't get sold to the client, unfortunately, but it's like on my reel. It's a very successful spot on my reel. People still gravitate towards. So I think if you can do it right, it's absolutely worth doing. And it's finding that balance of making sure that first and foremost you're doing the thing that like is your thing. So being funny for me, or show you in this one, it's basically a Anthem commercial, but instead of drinking beer, they're drinking rosé. But it's like a big build up to the point where you reveal like a cowboy turning with a glass of rosé, and then it's like joke. So it's just a build up, a big misdirect, showing that you can do that rug pull correctly and just kind of parody an existing format of the anthemic beer commercial.
I got into it. I was just selfishly into the Spec thing because I had just messaged somebody who we know last week at an agency, and I felt dumb because I said those words exactly what you said. I said, is there anything that didn't get made that you guys were excited about? Because we just need to flex in a different way right now, and we'd love to do it. Because you had said this elsewhere, I think in like 2020 in an interview, how somebody had something that they wanted to make that they never got to make, and I was like, that's it, that's the thing, that's what I was talking about, and I threw it out there. So it was, if nothing else, it was validating in a fun way.
Like I said, I had this conversation with a buddy of mine who's like, he's a terrific director, and one of the hardest things is you're gonna get pigeonholed, right? So it's like, how do you get pigeonholed into the thing you want to be pigeonholed in? And it's like, it doesn't work that. Like, I started in hidden camera to see it going, and it was like, I didn't want to do hidden camera the rest of my life, but I was good at it and was able to get it done. And sometimes I'd end up like doing more of a documentary thing. Like the Monica Lewinsky thing was like a hidden camera doc with emotion, and I did more comedy, and people would be like, this is different for you. And you're like, yeah, it was a great opportunity, a great story, a great script, and you just go and give it your all, right? So, but for him, same thing. He's trying to get, he does a lot of like tech stuff, like a lot of like new app comes out, and he's like very funny, but also has like more of a technical approach and does a lot of motion graphic overlays. And he wants to do a little bit more just like straight dialogue comedy. And so we were having this conversation. He reached out to a couple creatives that we had worked with in the past, and I don't think they had anything for him, unfortunately. But I'm a big believer in, trying to find, I mean, you look at like the Doritos Crash the Super Bowl campaign, and like people come up with really creative, funny things on their own. I think it's helpful to have an understanding of what it is, right? So like the Doritos spot, it's gonna end with a chip pipe, and it's got to be funny. And then does it have a puppy or a kid or whatever, whatever you want to do? But it's like, it needs to have some thing to it. I think if you're writing just commercials in a void, you're probably either going to do more SNL parody, or you're going to, I don't know, maybe go off the market here. So I think it's always helpful to be like, do you already existing creative person have something for a brand that you know?
From the outside looking in, it looks like you're at the point where you can be selective about stuff, like you're getting things. Maybe that doesn't matter to contribute to this, but I was curious to know like what it is that you are looking for when these scripts are presented to you, and what makes you go, okay, this is, I mean, aside from just a job, like, what do you go, all right, this is something I can chew on. This is something I can dive into and get excited about. I can build around this, because then I want to know how you start translating your specific sensibilities into it. So I'm assuming there's something that has been slid across your desk metaphorically where you're just like, hey, I get that this is the type of humor for some people. It's not for me.
Yeah.
I don't know how to be creative here. And then another one comes in and you're like, please give me this.
100%. So I always do what, just like anybody, it's like, I read the script and do I laugh? It's like the very first thing. Do I think it's funny? Is there some irony? Is there some sort of a rug pull? Is it a parody? Like what is it? And why is it smart and funny? And if it is that, which I hope it is, then, how can I help plus it is always, the question. casting is of course something that I do, but every comedy director in the world does casting, but everyone does it differently. Like Harold from Dummy Films does very different casting from David Shane, who does different casting from Tom Kuntz. It's just like everybody has their own kind of style. For me, I kind of feel like or at least I try to come from like the John Hughes, Harold Ramis era of comedy, I feel like, which is a little bit more like real people-y, but definitely hopefully has big laughs, right? So that's kind of where I always come from. Like the people should be relatable, but obviously it's got to be funny. So it's a lot of situational comedy generally. And sometimes I'll do bigger, crazier, weirder things, like Kind Bar is kind of weird, Rash is kind of weird, and I love doing that stuff. But it's just, it's a little bit of a tweak on the real person thing. It's still coming off of like feeling like the guy is normal and then realizing he's wearing an ankle bracelet and he's a murderer. So it's just like that kind of stuff.
You've used the phrase rug pull a few times. Is this an industry term or is this your term?
It's not my term. I don't know. I don't think it's an industry term per se. It's like maybe a comedy term. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, just for the heck of it, can you explain that? Because somebody might want to learn your process a little bit, because you've used it almost structurally a few times.
It's like it's a misdirect. You set something up that the audience thinks is happening, and then you surprise them with something different. And if you were the guy who made The Sixth Sense, that it would be a horror the whole way. And if you're a comedy guy, it would be a joke. One of the best examples is Spike Jonze's IKEA lamp spot. The whole thing, he uses camera and music and rain and all this stuff to really draw emotion towards this poor lamp. It makes you feel for this lamp that's getting thrown out, that feels like it's being left behind. At the very end, a guy steps in the frame and in a strong Swedish accent, it's like, why do you feel bad for this lamp? So it's just like this big rug pull moment where the whole thing was a setup to get a big laugh. Same thing with that Bud Rosé spot is you fake out this anthemic beer commercial to get a joke in about it's going against what you thought it was. So yeah, it's like a big misdirect, and then you pull the rug out from under him and you get a laugh. And I don't know where I came up with that term, but I didn't come up with it. I stole it.
So cool to hear it used that way. You mentioned casting with the bigger spots you've been doing for the last X amount of years. Are you always invited into the casting process?
Yeah, so it depends. So like Carvana, when I work with Kristen Bell and Dak Shepard, who were amazing, like they are already on board. It's like a celebrity driven spot. Same thing with Doritos spot with the Chiefs. It's built into the concept. It's already planned. So they're not necessarily hiring me for casting for that. They're hiring me for performance though, and for ideas on how to obviously visually tell the story, but also make it the funniest it can be, right? And show the cars and the trucks and the brand in a good light, but make it really funny. So those situations are normally, it's pre-established, and maybe I'm peppering in extra talent around them, whether they're OCPs or extras. But if it's like dialogue scripted, no non-celeb, anybody goes kind of thing, then I'm definitely involved. Bringing on the casting directors that I want to work with and making sure we're digging the right pool of people. I'll probably throw some real names in the mix that I've worked with before to bring them in, and just I generally cast like a really wide net for the first casting. It's 200 people or whatever. Because for me, it's like maybe I'll be surprised. I have a really specific idea of what I want, but every once in a while, you just see something and you're like, that totally works. I don't know why. It's amazing. I think Larry David had a story about when they found Jason Alexander to play George, and they were digging. The second you see him, you're like, that's the guy. And sometimes that just happens, just like see the person. But, you try to keep like a wide, diverse net open. You probably have a big age range, and you want to make sure you get some improv actors, some traditional actors, like something. Whatever feels the most real normally works the best.
Yeah. For me. I assume you're casting almost 100% online these days as well.
Yeah. Honestly, for me, I I don't have a problem with that. There's certain things that I'm like, we have to do this in person. I can't text out virtually how you're with the team. But casting, I was kind of always, at least this is me, I always felt like I was sitting behind a TV screen with a thing of peanuts in front of me, like awkwardly being like, great job or whatever. Like it wasn't much different than what I do now, which is just do it on Zoom. And I feel like it's so much more efficient, and I feel less bad for making people drive 2.5 hours across town versus like walking to their living room. So I feel like this is better forever.
Yeah. Well, when it's not the Jason Alexander who just has it right away, when somebody just hasn't brought something, uniquely creative to it, do you have any methods that you're willing to share for like how you create an environment that fosters that authentic and, funny performance, particularly when improvisation is involved, which I'm assuming you're implementing into some of your stuff being comedy?
Yeah, I think like in the casting or in the final spot or like in the original callbacks and stuff,
Casting first. Yeah.
I generally go into casting with some alts that probably were already in my treatment as well. And part of it is just to see how do they handle off the cuff stuff that they didn't see coming, right? And also I asked them to do something, however they want, do it however you want to do it, show us something. And sometimes it's like a 12-minute take, but most of the time you're like, okay, I got a fresh version of that. I think a lot of comedy is just about being, especially in commercials, because you have such a short period of time, is about being kind of quick. So a lot of times I'll say faster, flatters. Let's try speed it up a little bit. But outside of that, yeah, I'm basically like wanting to see what they'll do on their own, wanting to see if they can do an alt that we come up with. And also callback is a great way to kind of test new material and see what's working and what's not.
I was interested in someone like yours process because I believe I've been in casting processes before where I've seen very talented people maybe not get selected because I'll keep it vague and say somebody in the room wasn't ready to give them something to work with, something to respond to, something to try to test.
Sure.
It's cool to hear what other people like yourself sometimes will try to give to them, and you'll be like, hey, there it is. That prompt really brought it out of them. That's what I want.
Yeah, for sure. And also there's a lot going on in the overall picture. Like when we pull up that final screen of 8 OCPs or whatever, it's like, okay, these two people are like the keys and everything else kind of falls around that. And sometimes that just like changes, like these two people think they work well together, those don't, or for whatever reason, it's not always that the person didn't crush it in the room. It's just like sometimes the overall cast works better as different people than maybe we thought when we got in there at first. Sometimes at 9 a.m., I'm like, this guy 100%, there's no question. We shouldn't even see anybody else. And at 2:30, somebody walks in, like their hair's disheveled and they just crushed it. And I'm like, all right, well, that's the person. I don't know why that is.
Yeah. Well, staying on your process, let's go back to, you said the agency. I'm just going to say the agency, your client, whoever. You've got that script. You already like it. You've already said, I'm on this one. Take me. You win and you've got it. I was curious to know when something's already funny. I'm assuming it's unique every time, maybe even different every time. I'd love for you to say that, not me so much. But how do you decide how and when it's time to start injecting your own comedic sensibilities in addition to the ideas that are already there to like maximize its potential? I don't know if you have a process or if you're just looking at it and you just kind of you just start making stuff. I'm curious to hear anything about how someone like you takes it and runs with it.
Yeah, it's an interesting question because, I mean, obviously the scripts are already very funny. So as the copywriter, maybe you don't want to hear other jokes. You're just like, this is the thing. I feel like with the stuff I get, it's always hilarious. I'm like, we got to shoot this exactly as it is. But comedy in general, at least for me, just lends itself to like trying things. And sometimes those things don't work. But I've never been in an edit where I'm like, I wish we had less joke options. It's like not the case, especially with the amount of deliverables you have. So you focus on nailing the script as written always. And a lot of times that ends up being the spot exactly as written. And then sometimes there's just a button joke that's just like, it's a little faster. And for whatever reason, it just like played a little more real or funnier because maybe the improviser put it in their own words. Or maybe they said it as it was written, but it just, I don't know, it popped. So like, for instance, like Kind Bar, did you see that one where the guy's wearing the ankle brace?
Yeah.
So we have like 10 versions of that. They're all oneers that basically end with different things. The original script, I think, was that he'd been arrested for armed robbery was the original joke. And it was very funny. It was very funny. And it was very, you could see clients going for that, right? And sometimes you're like, okay, what's the swing for the fence? They'll never go for it, but let's just make a joke.
Is this on the day or is this in prep?
This one, I think we just threw out on the day. And it was, what if he murdered his twin brother? And we threw it out and we tried it, and that's the one that went. So it's just like sometimes that happens, and sometimes the original script is funnier. So I really, for me, it's really about just giving ourselves options. So we're always ensuring it's the funniest spot possible.
So it sounds like maybe for a situation like the Kind Bar spot, you're showing up and going, hey, client's getting their version first and foremost priority, but I'm going to try these other things too. And then we're also going to start having discussions leading up to this to see who else might have a great idea. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that's So from the treatment originally, they'll always I always have an all jokes and ideas section, which is like a mishmash of here's a bunch of ideas this flowing out of my head on how we're gonna make this thing really funny. And here are some jokes that are really funny and that you might like or you might hate. And if you hate them, they're gone. And if you like them, let's talk about it. So that's kind of always happening from day one with me. And normally I feel like it's part of the reason I get hired. Like they either really will gravitate towards a joke or an approach or they don't, right? So yeah, for me, you're obviously opening yourself up to potentially losing the job by being like, here's some other ideas. But I'm never like tying people's hands. I'm just like, this is also fun. Maybe this is funnier. What do you think? Am I wrong? If I'm wrong, that's cool. Yeah, it's like,
Well, for someone like you with your process, we're talking commercials. It doesn't mean you've just got 5 extra hours of time and everyone's like, hey, who knows what we'll do at this time? I'm assuming you're talking to your production team and the agency, AD, everybody to have time built in for that. Would that be a good guess?
so I try to move very quickly to accommodate 2 things. One is make sure that I can essentially walk people through the takes that I think are funny on replay, essentially, so that everyone can sign off. There's 20 people doing stuff. A lot of times, especially because I'll do series, so I'll run a line 5 times in a row without cutting. So somebody might have missed the one that I liked. I will often build in enough time to walk people through what I'm liking and why, and the timing of that and everything. So everyone can say, yes, we agree, let's move on. And then I also move quickly so that I can get to those alts and or improv moments and things so that we have options in the edit.
What does it look like for you to move quickly? Are you minimizing takes and staying rolling and getting series like you said? Or are you just having like flawless prep?
It's always funny because you end up doing 20 takes of the wide and then they end up using 1 second of it, right? And then you're into the close-up for the dialogue. It's just kind of how it works. So it's like this. I know some guys that shoot close-ups first for that reason. I like shooting the wides first.
So that they can have more time to get their close-ups and their options?
Yeah, because basically sometimes people burn so much time in the wide that it ends up rushing to close-up.
Yeah, I've seen it. That's why I got interested once you said it that way. I was like, oh my gosh, he's right. Like we have gotten behind before on days because we're all this time was spent on the wide, making the wide pretty.
Right, shooting the wide 300 times. But the other argument is the wide probably has the product in it, and that's what clients probably more focused on. Want to make sure the client's happy with the product, so we should spend the time there. So I always start with the wides, but I make sure that I move quickly when I get into the close-ups and shooting series. It enables me to move quickly, but also enables me to get that performance tweaks I want kind of live. I feel like with comedy, trying to give somebody a note, cutting, redoing it, a lot of times just like kills the flow. And you're just like, that's great. Can you go a little faster? That's hilarious. What about trying this? Oh, I love that. Can you do one of your own? I feel like having the speed to just try things. It's like, you don't think about why it was wrong or anything. You just keep going. I feel like you get in a zone.
Where are you given those new ideas from? Are you close to the performer? Are you way back behind the camera?
Always try to be as close as possible.
So do you have a monitor or are you trusting your DP to just get it so that you can stay there and keep coaching on performances that you want?
I usually have a handheld monitor.
Yeah.
So I'm like right next to maybe lens or whatever, right with the actor. If it's a kid, I might even be like having them play to me as their eyeliner or something if I really like need to work on it or whatever, you know what I mean? But yeah, I always try to be as close as possible. Every time I've ever been behind a big lighting setup or whatever and like yelling to it just doesn't. If it's a celebrity, they're like, what? Who the fuck's talking to me? You know, and if it's a kid, you're never going to get anything. So
yeah,
every time you should just be right there.
However you got it. I almost question if it was like CGI or something because your kids' performances in your Toyota spot were so like laser good. I was like, man, those are really solid performances from kids and from 3 different kids.
Yeah, I was lucky in a couple factors.
Yeah.
One, we cast a real family kind of for that reason.
Are you saying that's a family?
Yeah, that's an actual family.
That's a family. Everyone in that car's related?
The whole thing. Yeah. That's the dad. He's an actor and his kids also act.
And just so people listening can hear, I got to do the podcast thing for a second. This was a Toyota Highlander spot. And what year was that?
Ooh, that was like COVID time. So it was probably 2021 or 2020.
Yeah.
Because I remember agency wasn't there. Yeah, Jeff Cronenwith shot it, who shot Social Network. And
oh my gosh, really? I didn't even see that.
Yeah, Jeff is amazing. He's such a nice guy.
It's a good looking spot too.
Yeah, no, he's amazing. I always think working with DPs of that caliber make the comedy funnier because it looks so professional.
I did think when I first saw it, I was like, this is really clean. Like it was so shiny and it looked expensive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're just sitting and pulling into the driveway.
Yeah, I think there's something to it though, right? Like when Clerks is hilarious, and that was shot by them in black and white, and you can barely see half of it. But so it's not like you need it to be. But I think in some instances, if you can get like a big film look, like a Jeff Cronenberg type, and then have like kids doing like fart jokes, it's funnier. It's like.
So for that reason, was that your decision to bring him in?
Yeah, Jeff shoots a lot of cars. Like he's obviously one of the best cinematographers in the world. And they actually, the group so the agency was 22 Squared. And they had worked with Jeff before, and I had not worked with him yet. And I really wanted to. So everyone was kind of aligned on let's hire Jeff. And thankfully he said yes. And yeah, no, he's amazing. Not only like incredibly talented, but one of the nicest dudes ever.
Well, I think if I'm understanding some of your comedy and style correctly, once you said, I realized it kind of worked on me too a little bit. You almost like bait people in. It's like, oh, okay, this is a serious car commercial. I'm about to see another series. I don't know if that was your intention. Once you explained it that way, I was like, oh, maybe that's why I laughed.
It wasn't necessarily a full misdirect, but I think it's like you don't see it coming as much.
Yeah.
We build it from there and end with the littlest kid saying the most ridiculous line. I mean, everybody has their own way of doing things, right? There are some directors that are also DPs, so they want to operate the camera more. And then there's guys like, I think Quentin Tarantino does shoot some of his own stuff, but I've heard him talk about being close to talent and not far away and stuff. So I think the average performance person would say get close. And if you're an actor and you're like, what are you saying from across the room? It's like harder to I think, be in it.
Your career's cool, man. Again, I was being a little silly when I opened with the Chiefs thing. Like, you have made it. I don't know what you say when you look in the mirror in the morning, but like as a commercial director, you're there. And I'm curious to know what was one, if not several, it could be personal, it could be professional, but like, what were a couple of those like landmarks in your life where you look back at and you're like, that's when it started to take off. I made this decision and this slingshotted me into this next thing. And it could be anything. Like a city you lived in, marriage, career, the Spec.
Yeah.
It's up to you.
I feel very lucky to do what I do because I love making stuff. Like, it's so fun. Who doesn't? If you went to film school or whatever, obviously that I think is your goal, to make things with friends or people that you admire and create. For me, it's just making people laugh is what I like to do. For others, I think, it's a little different, but I don't feel like I've made it yet either. And it's not financially driven per se, or I haven't made that feature that I've always wanted to make since I was 20, and I'm 41. So it's like, we can always keep going. And I haven't done that first Super Bowl spot yet. I did a teaser for Doritos, but I haven't done.
Yeah, you're on the door. You're close.
I haven't done, the Super Bowl ad yet. So making it, I think, is just so relative. I do feel good about where I'm in my career because I do like the boards that I get. I like the people I get to work with. I'm not David Shane or Jim Jenkins or, that kind of thing. I still feel like I'm very much up and coming and still hustling. But you know what? That's fun. So I'm okay with that. Outside of that, I think some pivotal things in my career, somebody I'm now friends with, but at the time didn't know at all. This guy, Xavier Worthy, he's a creative director at Goodby, and he gave me a shot at the Samuel Adams campaign. Basically, they'd been going for about a year, the Your Cousin from Boston Samuel Adams campaign, which was like so hilarious to me. Growing up in the Northeast, I just loved that campaign, and they had a round of work and they needed a new director and they gave me a shot. And I think I had some funny stuff on my reel. There's no question. And it's just like getting that snowball going, and it's like, I think Sam Adams, Your Cousin from Boston, was like a big part of that snowball. But the snowball started with the Volkswagen ad that eventually becomes this thing from Rosé that didn't go, but it made my friends realize, wow, okay, Wynn can actually do this stuff now, this level stuff, which that was going to be, if it went, it was like Super Bowl ad. So just continuing the snowball. I think doing ZocDoc with 72 and Sunny was great. I love that work. I think it has a great look. The DP shot at Barrie is fantastic. We shot it up in Toronto. So it's just continuing that snowball. And I think what's so funny is Doritos is like Sports Center, like the original campaign. I think anybody who played sports or whatever was around during that time, I'm dating myself, loved that campaign. And I loved that campaign. So it was so fun to go back to the original style that I started with, which was more like mockumentary, handheld, kind of really dry. So that was super fun for me. But yeah, still building that snowball and hoping that AI doesn't dismantle the whole thing like everybody else. And we'll see what happens.
Speaking of, you've referenced liking The Office before.
Yeah. I think The Office, for me, one thing I love so much about it is how real it felt, right? Like the pan, the letting the Zoom breathe and like letting it didn't have to look like a movie per se. It looked like what it was supposed to, which was like a fake office documentary. So I loved that. I think it's a good example of staying to the bit. You're setting up a bit. The bit is that you're doing a documentary in this office with the most inappropriate boss in the world.
Yeah. Well, you made an AI comment, and one of my questions, and it's supposed to be a little silly but serious, as in there's truth in every joke. As a director, what's keeping you up at night lately? What's haunting you, if anything?
It's funny because I think the time I decided to become a director was probably the beginning of the worst time to be a director, because it was like budgets were shrinking, everybody was going after every job, and it still kind of feels like that sometimes. And the AI thing just makes that more like, what's going to happen? I don't think yet AI can do good performance. If I was a landscape photographer, I'd be really concerned. If there's no like legislation put in place to protect all the stuff that it steals from to create whatever it creates, I just don't see how that isn't going to displace a lot of people. And will that dig into VFX and blah, blah. But at the same time, it's like this stuff happens every 15 years and something's the end of advertising or the end of Hollywood or the end of New York City. When COVID happened, Jerry Seinfeld said, New York always bounces back. And he was right. So I wouldn't want to live in a world where you're just watching stuff made by robots all day long. But that said, I think that you can use AI to make pitch documents and make a fake 30-second spec to sell an idea or whatever. And I think that is where we're probably headed in the next couple steps. Like right now, I do 40-page treatments with images and GIFs. I still don't know. Supers and also. And I think the next thing is like, well, just show me the commercial, how you do it. At some point, that'll happen.
We're getting real close now to the point where I can't tell who's a real Instagram influencer or who's like an AI or something. But the dead giveaway is that the performances are atrocious. Someone will try to make a spot where someone's talking and it's just robots all over the place. And I'll double agree with you. I don't know if people want to see it for that aspect. I think you're actually going to make people not care.
Yeah, that's how I feel. There's lots of stuff you can make with AI that'll look gorgeous and work. Like if you're doing a Corona ad that's just the model sitting on a beach with like the waves moving in the background for social, maybe that's just AI.
Those people are in trouble.
But yeah, I think, look, at the end of the day, my hope is that humans stay heavily involved in creating movies, TV, music, all the stuff, poetry, all the stuff that we've been doing forever. When you work with like a celebrity, sometimes you'll be like, what makes this person special? How are they so good? And then they step in front of the lens and whatever it is, the camera loves them. They are just amazing. But it's like a human flame. It's not like something that can just be totally fake, but who knows? I'm hoping that performance is still needed.
Yeah, I think it will be. I think it's what people want. You know, I was glad you mentioned treatments. That was going to be my next thing about you. And so it sounded like you said you put together 40-page treatments.
I try to make them as short as possible, but it depends. I mean, if it's a campaign with 5 scripts, that's an extra bunch of pages. If it's a campaign with to add 1 script, then it can be shorter. I think it always just depends. There's a cars, so do I have a section talking about how I'm going to shoot the cars or whatever the product might be. So I think it always depends. I mean, look, the guys who have really, really made it in this industry, the Heralds, the David Shanes, the Jim Jenkins, the guys I continually mention, my guess is they don't have to do such long treatments. I'm not saying they don't do amazing treatments. I'm sure they do, but they could also do a Word doc and I think probably be okay. At the end of the day, sometimes it's funny because I'll break down what really matters in my treatment, like what should win me the job or not. And that's normally like one section. And that section is like thoughts, all jokes, that sort of thing. Unless it's like the casting is revolutionary. They've seen my work. They know I work well with actors and cast films well and things. So I really think it's like, what is this guy's perspective? Do we like his vibe? Do we think he's going to collaborate and work hard and do a good job? And is he the funniest?
Knowing that agencies, unless something's changed, they're still seeking the best ideas through the bid process, a traditional bid process, triple bid, whatever you want to call it. I did see some stuff about you having a collaborative nature between your designer and in-house producer. You guys were bouncing around ideas about strategies for just better treatments and whatnot. And I love that you were already starting to go down that path a little bit. That was really cool, what you said about this one page often being the difference maker. I know there's potentially a secret sauce that you're like, well, I'm not going to give that away. But for whatever you're willing to share, I'd love to hear where you're just like, all right, man, I'm bidding again. And I know there's 2 other people at the table, maybe 5 others, that it's me versus them. What am I doing with this? And however you can engage with that. I'd love to hear it.
On our initial call, I always, we talk about how they got where they are, the insight and the script itself, and if they're open to all jokes and what matters to them, maybe what makes them a little nervous or whatever, or if they're hoping something different than what's on the page and how they got there, blah, blah, blah. So I get like the background story. For me, with my treatments, I really try to check all the boxes, probably too much. If you read it, you'd be like, there's no question I have outside of maybe like a couple creative things, but like, I get the look and feel. Like I get how he's good, the cinematography and lensing element. I get what he wants the sets to look like, assuming that's a big part. I get the casting. I want all those things to basically be checked off. How the cars are going to be shot, maybe even a production approach of when I'm going to shoot them during the day versus when we shoot the dialogue. And I generally want all that stuff to be checked off so that when they get to the film section, the jokes should pop on the screen when they see like the image I selected and just their line that they wrote super. Like that should work already. And then I have a section where I just throw out a bunch of kind of ideas on what I think is going to further improve their spot and make the situation funnier and therefore the whole thing funnier. And that might be a line of dialogue. That might be a rug pull moment or how we're going to make it look like an anthem spot, even though it's really not, or that sort of thing. So talk just more and more about that stuff. Do I think a piece of music might help or not? So that's really the main thing. I think they read it all and I think they digest it all and it all matters. But if you didn't write anything about the cinematography and lensing, you didn't really write anything about the casting, you didn't write anything about the locations or production approach, but you wrote the funniest take from frame 1 to frame 10 of the spot, I think you'd still win the job. So I don't think necessarily, I think they'd come back to you maybe and say, we want to work with you. We need you to do this. Like that's always how it is. But I don't think you just lose it because some guy did 60 pages and another guy did 10. I think the best ideas, the people that they feel the most comfortable will make their work the best is who they will hire. And every once in a while, maybe they hire somebody because they're a big name or something. But in general, I mean, I don't think anybody's sacrificing their work. Everyone's making a selection based on what will make their work the best. And sometimes I think there's other elements that go into that. We have a new client that we've never worked with, and we've never worked with this director. So maybe we won't work with them this time, even if it goes well. Like maybe that'll happen. Or there's other reasons people pick people, but in general, I think it's funniest wins, at least in my world.
Is it relationship specific? Because you yourself said at the beginning of our discussion, and I'm going to butcher it trying to say it back to you, but oftentimes the thing that the agency or the client is already presenting to you is what they're going to shoot, right? They're just having you shoot it.
First of all, I think it depends on the product. Like, for instance, I've done some pharmaceutical stuff, and there's so much legal and so much testing and so many things that don't exist in other maybe product categories that they have to be a little bit closer to the animatic, I feel like. Whereas like a beer commercial or something, other than not drinking it on screen, which they recently made fun at with the Bud Light spot, which was funny. Other than that, it's kind of like funniest wins. Like as long as it sticks to the concept, gets the messaging across that they've approved, and you shoot the script as well, so they have the option. I think, but I do think there's a version of you change too many things that will lose you a job for sure. If it's a car ad with a kid and a dad, and you're like, what if it's a spaceship and it's a mom and a dog? It's like, you change too much,
But maybe have you ever pushed something like that through before? Where you're like, all right, this is going to be a little bonkers, but I love it for you.
I probably pitched, I've definitely done that before, and I've probably lost it.
Okay, it's good to learn.
I think all the great work on my reel was written in the way it was written. There's a guy on a couch and we reveal he has an ankle bracelet monitor. He's holding a kind bar. All that stuff already existed. I just helped plus it without completely changing what they'd been through. Because the amount of rounds the agencies go through. Because the other thing that was great about being at an ad agency is seeing, oh my God, the amount of rounds in it's probably even worse.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's a good note.
But that doesn't mean you shouldn't plus it. You should just plus it within the realm of don't change the concept. Right.
Yeah.
You can add people. Like when I did the first round of BMW that I'd done with Al Roker, I pitched them on like the kid in the back of the car. I can't remember. I think it was 2 kids at first and they were older. And I was like, let's make it 1 kid and make them younger. It'll just be funnier. I always find the younger the kid is, the funnier it is, basically. As long as it's like in the 6-year-old range. I don't know why. Especially if they're saying something adult. Stuff like that where they're like, oh, I like that approach. That's funny. That will make it funnier without completely changing the concept or whatever.
What does a typical day in your work life look like? Like, how do you structure your days to stay disciplined and inspired?
Well, I had a kid. She's just over 2. She's awesome. So wake up, do breakfast with her, that sort of thing, get her ready for the day. Here's one thing I will say. If you're thinking about becoming a full-time director or a freelancer or whatever, because my wife is creative and she's a freelancer, you have to get okay enjoying the downtime, because there's going to be long pauses of silence where you think your career is over. This is how it works with what we do. Yeah. I mean, unless you have a full-time job, it's like you'll get, like anything, there's waves, ups and downs, and I might not get aboard for 6 weeks. And I'm like, what's going on? And then I'll get 3, in a day.
When you say bored, I'm sorry to interject. Can you explain that term?
A script.
Okay.
Yeah.
And who are you getting that from?
An ad agency sent it to my rep in some territory asking for reels for this spot. They sent my reel as one of the reels they sent. Hopefully somebody selected me, and now I'm in like a smaller pool of a few directors that considering. They're wondering if I'm interested in doing a first call. That's how it works for me.
Okay.
It's like pre-storyboards, but normally they put a couple images with the script to show the main visuals they're imagining. And so it just kind of helps spell out exactly what they're thinking. Right now, I know it's really quiet for a lot of creatives, so it'll get better, but it gets quiet.
I was curious, at what point in your career did you get repped?
The sales reps are always part of the production company, Joe.
Okay, got it. Because I know tools in Santa Monica, but I didn't know if you had additional reps or how that works.
I do not. So there's definitely directors who have like film and TV reps that handle that part of their business. Generally, our reps are the production companies we're signed with, and then the sales reps that they have deals with. So Mugler's got their reps, So Positive has their reps, Tool has their. So, and sometimes they cross over. Like all these reps have 10 companies in there that they represent or something, so.
Cool. Good to know. Thanks for sharing that. Are there any skills or qualities? Because obviously skills is totally up in the air. We mentioned AI. Are there any qualities you think are from your experience, what you're seeing that might be most important in the years to come? And I'm going to kind of batch this in with another question. Are there any exciting trends that you're exploring? Like how maybe you are trying your best to anticipate the future of the ad world and commercial world evolving? I know that's kind of broad. That's by design.
I mean, you're never going to make it prettier than AI, I think, in terms of a deck or an image or in a GIF or whatever. So it's like the content just has to be on such a human emotional level that it's different and original. And so as long as you do that, whether it's making somebody laugh or making somebody cry or think or whatever, if you try to make a prettier fake AI model, you're going to be in trouble.
You know what? That's a pretty solid answer. Brief but solid. This one's a bit of a fun one. This is how I'm really going to get your opinion. So I'm revealing the maneuver here before the question. Your identity's wiped out. You have to start over completely. What do you do, and where are you starting today to build back up to where you want to be? The aliens made us forget who Win Bates is. Nobody knows you. You got to start over.
So I had no reel. Like I can't show any work I've done. That couldn't have been too difficult. Let me think.
In fact, I can tell you Dustin's reply to this, if that helps kickstart yours. Dustin said, I'd be an influencer. And I laughed, and he just kept staring at me. And I was like, really? And he said, yes, I think I'd be an influencer. He was like, the power that influencers are wielding is insane. I was like, okay.
Yeah, but in that situation, he's assuming he could become one. So he's basically saying, if I was going to focus all my energy on something new, it would be becoming an influencer. That's what he was saying?
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not totally wrong. Like YouTube creators are like making more money now than feature film directors and stuff. But I think I would do the same thing I did before, which was kind of chase the thing I want to do. Like I'd be an awful influencer. Like I would just complain all the time.
Well, influencer is kind of a broad term, because I would say there's these guys who I don't know their names. I won't bother to look it up. But they're just a couple of buddies who make skits, and now they're making skits which they have, I would assume, almost total control over. And they're like, oh man, what are we gonna do later? Well, I've got this 6-pack of Angry Orchard. They're looking at the camera, and I looked at them. And I was like, they must be having so much fun because they did this their way up to this point, and now Angry Orchard's reaching out to them.
For sure. I mean, I remember one of the first projects I did when I was at Deutsch was for Taco Bell with, God, what's his name? Who's the guy who does all the VFX cool stuff online? His name's Zach something. and he hadn't quite made it. Now he's done feature films. Right? He's like super talented. But it's like, same sort of thing. It's like, if I was starting over today and I was like, how am I going to become a director or do what I want to do? I would be doing like YouTube shorts.
You're just shooting your own stuff again.
I started doing that when I was younger, but I wasn't that young. I was in grad school, so I was probably like 28. But the problem was we were trying to do like TV shows on YouTube, and they were like, they need budgets, and it wasn't just like us. And I would just do stuff that I could do for free with my friends because you can't maintain a budget requiring skit. It's like it needs to be set in the living room of your house or whatever, or the backyard, just so you have access to it and just do it, or shitty green screen or whatever. It's more about, is it funny? Is it saying anything? Is there a good story? Yeah. So if I was young and fearless and starting over, or aliens had erased everyone's memories and I was 41 but no one knew me, I would just start making skits again.
I think it's a cool answer. I think I would probably want to. In fact, total transparency, I want to do the same thing now.
Yeah.
I still kind of just think, I'm like, how do I free up time to just get with people and start doing stuff for fun?
I know, me too. But then I'm like, yeah, but will it be dumb?
And I think that's the problem with getting older. When you're young, you don't do that. You just hit upload and ruin your life, or you get a big following.
Yeah, I think you start taking less risk. Right? You suddenly have a mortgage or rent and kid on the way or whatever. It's like you're getting scared. But yeah, I still plan on taking some swings. We'll see. But yeah, the YouTube creator thing, I just don't know. Like, I have some ideas that I think would be fun and interesting, but yeah, I just need to set up a mini set in my house and just start making sketches.
Is there any advice you think anybody who wants to get where you are can consider ignoring?
I heard a guy once say, never do a job for the money. And at the time I had no money and was trying to get jobs. So like, I think never sell your soul, obviously, but if it's like a piece of creative that you just try to make it your coolest, but I think everyone's going to pay their rent. So I wouldn't shy away from doing something that is not morally reprehensible just because it's not Oscar worthy. Everyone's got to build their snowball. So you got to start somewhere. So start somewhere. Because it's like the problem with specs, people are always like, oh, well, it was spec. If they could do whatever they want. And it's like, well, but if they tied it into the brand and made it all work, that's the hardest part with the spec work is that it actually has a good insight, has a good idea behind it, and the product is in some way playing a factor normally. So sometimes it just cuts to art part of skills or whatever. But
that's cool, dude. Well, if you're open to people following your work, where can they follow your work or connect with you to learn more about your projects?
On Instagram at WinBatesWork, and my website is worldwidewin.org because it's basically a nonprofit.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for doing this. We appreciate you, taking some time to share your experience, wisdom.
Yeah, of course. Hey, thank you. I think anybody trying to get started or anybody already working like me but trying to get better, we just got to keep making stuff. That's my plan.
I love that, man.